Hello, and welcome to episode 7 of the Lost Decades podcast, covering the years 1860 BC to 1830 BC. So we're doing 30 years this episode for the first time, our first ever 30 episode, 3 year, 30-year episode. It's late. It's almost 10 p.m. On the East Coast, so.
Or almost 7 if you're in a regular part of the world.
3 year time zone. So this episode, I would say, is we're wrapping up the Isin-Larsa period, and we just really have a lot of kings. We're gonna not make it an episode of just listing off random names and saying they didn't do anything. We're gonna try to do that as little as possible, but that is a lot of what's going on. We got these little city-states fighting, and no one is holding on to much power for very long. So it's scrabbling for power. But before we get there, we're going to start in Egypt, which is a lot steadier. I would say it's actually kind of the opposite, which Egypt tends to be more like this, but we've really got two back-to-back long reigns and, holding a lot of land, and just kind of doing their Egyptian stuff.
Yeah.
And I did look it up because we mentioned it last episode before we jump in, and it kind of literally leads us into Egypt in a certain way. But in 2000 BC, according to the Wikipedia page for Abraham, is according to the Bible. So literally in the Bible, it says in 2000 BC, Abraham journeyed from Ur of the Chaldees, which I'm not sure what that means, in Mesopotamia to Canaan. Canaan? Are we saying Canaan? Canaan?
I'm used to hearing it Canaan, but I don't know what's actually
Canaan. And traveling with his wife Sarah and nephew Lot, he settled in Haran, somewhere in Canaan, before migrating to Shechem and Hebron. Oh, right. So he stopped in Canaan. Then it was like a drought, so he kept going, I think, into Egypt, but then he turned back. Oh, I have the map. Sorry, I forgot I have this map for our video watchers. Then he goes up really far north in Mesopotamia to Haran, and then goes south into Egypt, and then, yeah. So anyway, it was in 2000. So according to the Bible, by now in the 1860s to 1830s, like we said, is when some Canaanites are coming into Egypt, and we'll hear more about them. But first up, we still have Senusret III, who had started in our last episode, but do you have anything you want to say? Why don't you kick off Senusret III?
Just to kind of, we covered most of what he did, but to go over some of the other key things, is one of his big things was that land reclamation in the Fayum Oasis. He made it kind of like a little paradise is maybe the wrong word, but it was a very desirable place to live, had a lot of productivity in terms of agriculture, had a lot of building projects and stuff like that. And he also helped pacify Nubia, which had been something the previous kings had been doing, but he traveled further down to the Third Cataract and essentially took all of that, and it led to a huge mining and kind of gold boom in the city. Or not the city,
And
sorry.
silver was worth more than gold.
Yeah, which was an interesting concept, because I guess it's all relative. Even if globally gold is more rare than silver, if you're producing, 10 times more gold than you are silver, then silver's the rare thing.
But really what you want is tin.
Yes.
And some
And as we
bronze.
talked about, most of it was coming from Elam, at least for these regions.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the main thing. He was very much like a warlord kind of conqueror. He was liked by the people, at least. We're past the kings of the previous kings of the dynasty who were there kind of try to solidify their power and people rebelling and fighting. We're now into the two kings that are essentially at the height of this
Middle Kingdom. Yeah. And again, they're loving the co-regency. So then his son Senusret III
brought his
sorry, Amenemhat III?
Well, if you were talking about regency, I just meant, Senusret III brought his son Amenemhat III as co-regent.
As co-regent. And how long that happened for 20 years.
Really? Okay, wow. See,
That's what
I
I
couldn't.
saw.
No, no, no. I believe you. I didn't find the info on how long he was co-regent, so that's crazy.
Yeah, and
Which
would you say
actually
that
tracks with how then I heard about Amenemhat the Third. He was very well liked
hmm
by the people. I know I kind of said that by the previous one, but that was more of like a, oh, he's the king, whatever. This one was actually a king where people are like, this guy's great. I really like this guy. Like,
I think he
there
was
was
a
a
lot
lot.
more peaceful. It says that it basically because his father had such an aggressive military campaign, he didn't really have to do that,
Mhm.
so he was able to just not fight wars.
I mean, they talked about that even Nubia, that had been kind of traditionally very like rebellious, not happy with their rule. Were actually like this guy. They recognize him as their leader legitimately, at least without protest.
hmm
Were willing to help on other projects he had going on. They weren't very resistant or anything.
And yeah, he did a lot of building projects around the Fayum Oasis, which
Yes,
some
which
of the
makes sense.
pharaohs
That
had
was
built.
the area that his father helped develop. I thought it was interesting that this guy he's known for having the Black Pyramid, which now
Oh,
just
that
is
sounds
kind of like
cool.
this dark hill. It is funny. I don't know if we mentioned that in the last one, but a lot of these pyramids that these Middle Kingdom people built did not stand the test of time, especially
Yeah.
apparently Senusret the Third. His pyramid was like the least maintained in terms of it just looks like it just looks like a hill, like a little
hmm
hill that's eroded so much you wouldn't even guess it's a pyramid. Um,
Yeah.
but it's kind of
That's
funny how we ran into that this time, where Amenemhat III says he built the Black Pyramid in Dashur, but due to structural failures caused by being a little too close to the Nile, the ground was unstable and stuff like that. He essentially abandoned it and then built a second pyramid, the
wow. He didn't give
Huawei
up.
Wawara Pyramid, um, built near the Fayum Oasis.
Okay.
And I thought it
Well,
was interesting because this is where it
yeah.
kind of enters another thing of myth, thanks once again to the Greeks, specifically Herodotus, which is just hilarious because we obviously won't be talking to him for a while, but he's one of the people we get a lot of Greek history stuff from, and he was known to embellish a lot.
Yeah.
And so all I mean is he mentioned that there was a that Amenemhat III wanted to keep people from getting into his pyramid, so he built an extensive labyrinth. And according to Herodotus, it had over 3,000 rooms, and it was a giant thing that no one had ever gotten through if they weren't the royal family who knew the way through. But doing
hmm
research on that, they said there was some sort of labyrinthine thing, quite small, but there was no record of anything that massive. And it's quite possible it's just lost and it's been degraded over time. But I think what's more likely is Herodotus saw something cool and kind of just embellished it a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how like history would even work back then. Like, I don't think they saw it as like straightforward as we do now, but yeah, it's mainly I think based off just like merchants and sailors, like legends they hear when they're in the port and then it gets
Yeah.
changed over time and it probably was like at the time like oh wow, it was like the most elaborate like tunnel system they'd had in like a couple centuries and then no one else in Greece has anything like that, so it sounds crazy, but if you look at it it's like oh well it wasn't like the coolest one ever.
Yeah.
It makes sense why it's based on some sort of history.
Yeah. Which is it's interesting.
Yeah, it's cool to have it. And I don't know, I always think about just the idea that there could be some like event or like a story, but I don't know, like some sort of like major event that several people wrote about, but then it just so happens that every source that wrote about that just over history was lost and we just don't even know what happened. But like
Yeah.
to the average person in like 500 BC, it was like, oh yeah, we all know about that Egyptian pharaoh, but in 2026 now we have no idea it happened.
Especially with just so many pharaohs with so many stories.
So many pharaohs. Yeah.
I mean, just
Yep.
think about how many we've covered, and we're
Yeah.
just talking about the 12th dynasty. We did obviously a little of the 11th as well, but
And many more to come.
yeah.
And I did,
So, oh,
yeah,
go ahead.
sorry. I was gonna say it not that interesting, but it mentioned that Senusret the third, after he was dead, there was a sculpture made of his head. um, that you can see now in Kansas City, Missouri.
Well, that's
It's cool
cool.
because actually a lot of these pharaohs we've been talking about, you can actually go to some museum, a lot of them in the US, and see their statue.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
Egyptology was definitely
Mhm.
booming in,
Big thing.
ironically, the 1800s AD.
Exactly. That's a good point. So I don't know. Yeah, I feel like Egypt, good stuff's going on. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we move
I was just
on
going to
to
say
Mesopotamia?
that a few more things I wrote down about him. It was kind of interesting because this is something that I didn't notice, but a lot of things I read were making note of it. That he changed the sort of style that they painted and sculpted the pharaohs. Instead of making them youthful and spry and everything like that, they focused more on like, oh, he's got like a weary face. He's got heavy eyelids, sunken cheeks, large ears. They said we don't know for sure why, but historians interpret it potentially that he was trying to show the burden of kingship and how much he cares about the people and how much he works for them and fights for them. That it takes a toll on the king. That that's why there's so much pressure on him, and you got to have so much respect for everything he's doing for us.
It's probably, yeah, that, and it's kind of just interesting that the art form is like just slowly improving, where they're just learning how to do like more like effects to make it look more realistic.
And he also, like his father, had a lot of people moving into the realm, specifically from the sorry, I lost it, the region, the
Mayan or no?
Asiatic.
Asiatic, like
Yeah,
so like near Greece.
yeah. There was a lot of people coming there again, not as slaves, laborers looking for jobs, and they did a lot of trading. Apparently, a lot of turquoise was quite popular.
Hmm.
Um, Used for a lot of stuff by them. But the whole point was to show again how he's a good king. He didn't have to conquer, he didn't have to threaten, he didn't have to do anything like that. People were willing to like, let's trade. We want to go to Egypt. Like we got all this stuff. Come on, let's give it to the king. He's gonna like us. Um, and essentially, but yeah, essentially all these people coming in. Not to spoiler what's coming later, but all these mix of cultures is great until it's not. Later down the line, it kind of leads to the second intermittent period.
Ooh,
He's essentially this is Amenemhat the Third is like the last great king because
really?
after
Okay.
that I mean it's a little bit past, so we can talk about it next episode. But
All right.
not the last great king of Egypt, but of this dynasty. There's only two
Yeah,
that follow, and they are, let's just say,
not so
not
good.
great.
Yeah, I
So
know. It is funny because when you have the best times to be alive, or at least to be a country that's stable, uh, are sometimes the most boring to look back on. I mean, if we were to know like the pop culture of the time or something, maybe there's like some really cool music happening or something. But like just in terms of the history, it's like, okay, yeah, this guy ruled for 40 years. He did a lot of good stuff, but yeah, once we get to the intermediate period, it's going to be a lot more going on where there'll be like multiple dynasties kind of it's hard to say which one was in charge. They're both kind of in Egypt and different parts of it
I
fighting.
mean, speaking
So
of that, that's kind of what's funny about what we're getting at for
that's, yeah,
Mesopotamia.
exactly what's going on in Mesopotamia right now. And that is later going to be much more stable.
Because what you can usually tell, if nothing else, from stability in a region is how long their kings reign. When you have, 100 years with like three kings or four kings is pretty good. But when you have 10 years with like six kings, you can tell things aren't going great.
And we don't have a Gungunum this week. There isn't one that's stuck in my head of like, oh, this guy had a lot going on.
Yeah, I agree.
So, starting out, just overall generally, to
Over to
set
Mesopotamia.
the scene, we're in the Isin-Larsa period in Mesopotamia, and there are some trade work, trade networks. They're trading hides, wool, oil, ivory. Oh, that's with the Indus Valley. So, that's one thing is, when I look at this map of sort of like ranking the populations of the different
Mhm.
regions, or I don't know how they're ranking it, but um,
This one is they're ranking it by number of pixels on the screen, so we can
just
take
how
that as
big it
basically
is.
land mass.
Interesting. Okay. So the Indus Valley is actually number two, right under Egypt, but it's just I think that we just don't have much evidence of it that we found. So I think that's why we don't really have much to say, but technically they're more powerful than any of
Well,
these
I guess it's because
Mesopotamian, or maybe not more powerful, but just
yeah,
more
they're
area.
larger, but I think it's more because we don't know about the individualistic kingdoms and powers at that time. We kind of
I
just
think they didn't write it down is the
yeah, we
main.
just kind of have a group of their entire culture. You know, it'd be kind of like if we didn't know much about Mesopotamia, and you just grouped it all and said, "Oh, Mesopotamia is huge," but they don't. If they didn't realize there's all these little kingdoms going at it.
That's yeah, it's just there could be these massive empires that we just don't know much about because they technically just didn't have writing, but they still were able to make like a massive city. So
Hmm.
just wanted to say that. And we one highlight from last week that we're kind of continuing into is that Enlil Bani had
Yeah.
seized Isin's throne, and the gardener who was put on the throne to basically get cursed, to take the curse away from the older king, and then the older king dies by somehow choking on hot soup.
Yeah, I even
So
looked too, and they said contemporaries think that the whole him being the gardener of the king and stuff is
might have been made up.
might have been made up more to they said because I was interested because I was like, well, that seems like it would go against your legitimacy. You know, usually you're trying to tie yourself to these
Yeah, it's
different
kind of
things.
a random story.
They said they think it was trying to make it look more legendary or like epic to show that
Like
like
an
guys, I
interesting.
was just a gardener and now I'm the king because if he was just like another
Mm,
noble who seized power, they
yeah,
people would have accepted it, but it wouldn't have been seen as like cool and like so amazing. It would just be like, oh, this guy just took over. But they're like, no, no, he was just a humble gardener who was forced on the throne and then now he's in charge.
that makes sense. Yeah, I could see either way. I could definitely see that he just wanted to make it up to make it sound like more legit than like I just conquered the city and took over,
Mhm.
or however he took over. He like killed the king or something.
No, no, no. They do say they think the curse thing was real. They just
Oh,
don't
okay.
think he was a lowly gardener. They just think possible
Oh,
he was
okay.
just another very high up noble.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So then, how long does he rule? 1860 to.
1860 to 1836.
Oh,
So
wow. So Isin seemingly maybe not the most stable, but just in terms of the ruler, is the most
just this
stable
time, because that's what I'm getting at.
this time.
After this, it is a quick succession of kings
Hmm.
after this guy.
Right. But after him, well, is there anything about his actual rule?
He
I didn't
heavily
have anything.
invested in city infrastructure, built the walls of Isin, and sorry, that was a common thing that I had to keep checking because a lot of times I was like, how are these guys building so many walls? And they said a lot of times I think they're kind of taking credit for just they repaired the walls or just made them a little bit bigger. And we're like, I built these amazing walls when in reality there were already big walls there.
They just like repaired them, yeah.
And just the fact that they were constantly at war and getting attacked, the walls were always getting damaged.
Well, also technically you could just build like a 10 block by 10 block wall and be like, I built a wall, even though it's
Mhm.
not really like a
And he
full wall.
continued the back and forth of because he claimed I restored Nipper, which I
Gotta do
double
that.
checked too. We're not messing that up. Yeah, every king claims to have restored Nipper, so it clearly was
Mm,
going back and forth a lot. So, um,
right.
yeah, and
And then
that
after
yeah,
him, was it
under his
Zim?
control, he also Uruk, the city of Uruk, seceded from
From
Isin.
Isin?
Yeah, yeah.
We'll get to them. I did write down a couple of those of Urik's kings.
He was kind of the last stable period of Isin before this kind of decline. And he was big on Sumerian, which surprised me again because before that, well, I guess isn't it been big on Sumerian? I guess that tracks. But to reiterate, Akkadian is the most common language, and most people feel like they're Akkadian, and Sumerian's kind of the ruling elite, but just for more or less Isin, because everyone else is Amorite, and they are very, very close to Akkadian in terms of language, in terms of culture, is very, very similar to Akkadian. so they blend in with that more easily.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then after him is his son Zimbaya?
Zimbaya, yeah. Grandfather of Zendaya. Um,
Man, I watched the first episode of season 3 of Euphoria with Zendaya, and it's a crazy show.
hmm
I don't know. I can't say I recommend it, but I recommend the first 2 seasons. But anyway, so Zimbaya
Yeah,
was
it's his lineage
defeated.
is a mystery. They
This is
don't
what's
link him to
sad.
any previous kings, so they don't know if it's the same family or not. It's quite
Okay.
possible he was a different family completely or the same one. He still titled himself King of Isin, King of Sumer and Akkad. Um, but it kind of sucks when your most famous feat was his defeat by Larsa.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like you rule a major city in your region, like one of the biggest cities on Earth, for 3 years. That's a long time. And your Wikipedia page, that's essentially all it is he's best known for his defeat at the hands of Sin Ikisham, king of Larsa. All right, I also just want to read this. So there's literally a single inscription is known for this king on cone fragments, which are literally a it looks like kind of a witch's like a the sorting hat in Harry Potter. It's like a sort of a weird hat shape that has like writing on it. But this is because I just think it's interesting that no matter if you were to just study, like I really want to know as much as possible about Zimbaya. It's like this is the only inscription. Zambaya, the shepherd who reveres Nipper, farmer who brings tall flax and grain for Duranki, true provider, who fills the courtyard of the Egama with abundant things, king of Isin, king of the land of Sumer and Akkad, spouse chosen by the goddess Inanna, beloved of the god Enlil and the goddess Ninisina, built the great wall of Isin. The name of that wall is Zambia, is the beloved of the goddess Ishtar. So that's all there is to know about Zimbaya in that one paragraph. That's all we know.
Yeah, it's kind of funny then. The only reason we know some of this other stuff is other kings being like, yeah, I definitely
I
beat
defeated
the hell
that
out of them.
damn Zimbaya.
Yeah. They did think it was interesting because he made a coalition with Elam, it seems like, to fight Larsa, which was just
So that
kind
was
of
him.
ironic given Isin's whole hatred of Elam and Elam's hatred of them and their constant fighting, and how they're like, wait a minute, Larsa's getting really big, we should team up, and then they still lose.
Yeah. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
hmm And then this kind of marks the downfall of Isin. I know we mentioned that before, but I mean, this really is like it's pretty much just losing city after city after city after this. Like they just don't. There's no coming back.
And yeah, because immediately after Zimbaya, we've got a 4-year reign, which leads us
It
all the way
tur
till 1829. It's Pisha. And let's see, for him,
They said one of the reasons they don't think there's much about him and the previous one is because there's been so much decline in the city. There's not really a lot of free time for them to be like, oh, look at like here's all my great administrative changes and here's all my like building projects and all this stuff. Because one, they had short reigns, but two, they're just putting out fires at this point. Maybe even literally in some places, but like they're just trying to hold it all together desperately, and they do not have time to make tablets and cones about their accomplishments. They're kind of just like, okay, like
I'm
let's
busy doing important, like trying to stay alive. Yeah, well, it's actually funny you say that because it says that one of the few things we have that references him is a petition to the king from a subject who has fallen on hard times. So that's not a great sign of how things are going.
yeah. And then under him, I think he briefly retook Nipper again, but this was the guy who was the last Isin king to ever even control Nipper. In his
Mm,
time, he loses it, and it never comes back.
okay. All
hmm
right, Isin.
I thought it was interesting too because one of the things they said, another record they have of him, is he essentially wrote a hymn to the gods, basically being like, "Why are you doing this to me? Please help! Like, I'm just
No,
losing control of everything. Please help me! And don't you
that's
hear my
sad.
prayers? Like, I need your help." And obviously, Did not answer because it does not go well.
Right. Okay, the thoughts and prayers didn't work. Well, I was thinking about it's kind of funny how we've been saying the words Isin and Larsa so many times for the past couple episodes, but pretty soon we won't really ever say those again.
Hmm.
It'll be the end.
I like that we're at least living up. We keep mentioning this is the Isin-Larsa period, and I feel like we've proven that.
Yeah, it makes sense why it's called that. You
When
say
you
those
dig into
names
the
a
history,
lot.
you're like, oh, I get it. I get why it's called that now.
Well, not yeah, and we're in the Larsa part for sure. So in Larsa from 1866 to 1850, so solid 16 years, carrying over from our last episode, is Nuradad.
Yeah. He,
And all I know is he's a contemporary of Samulael of Babylon.
yeah.
Is that all we
I
know?
mean, some of the things I found was he obviously he was focusing on maintaining the established borders of his predecessors. Essentially, I thought it was funny because it says he's trying to keep out nomadic groups from taking over different cities and coming to power, which is just so ironic given that that's how he came to power. Like, just was like a nomadic tribe that pushed out the locals and then took over. And now he's like, oh my God, they're doing it to me. I can't believe it. Um, he rebuilt one of the temples to the god Enki
Classic.
in Eridu. And he constructed a massive palace in Larsa, trying to symbolize his stability and wealth. But
All right.
obviously, this was kind of what's it called? Like, putting paint over the problem because things
Mm,
were not going well. Granted, as we're talking about how Larsa's doing well, it seems like more from a dynastic standpoint, things are not going well. There's a lot of other people vying for control of this newly growing empire, maybe we can call it that. It's probably still just a kingdom. Um,
mm.
yeah.
But
And
it's
again,
the center of power, yeah.
yeah. I still thought it was funny too that once again he's also like, oh, I'm just a shepherd, I care
They love
about.
being shepherds.
Yeah, they love being shepherds. It's funny to think about that when we cross that with more middle-aged kings and stuff like that, or even just the ancient ones, I guess, going into Rome and stuff. How their whole thing is like, wow, I'm so kingly. Like, look at all my gold, look at all this.
Right.
But back then, they're kind of the opposite. They're like, whoa, no, I'm just a shepherd. I don't know what you guys like. I'm just like you. I'm just a
That's
common.
actually, yeah, that is really funny too, because when the Romans started calling themselves emperors, they were using it to try to not sound too full of themselves because it meant
Okay.
more like commander. It was like, oh, I'm just like a really good fighter. But
Mm-hmm.
then in your other European countries later, when they wanted to sound really powerful, they're like, I'm an emperor. I'm even stronger than a king.
Yeah.
So it's funny how, yeah, the original people are trying to be chill, but then the later people, the meaning gets changed.
Yeah. That's kind of the
Well,
end of him.
yeah, then after him, it's Sin Idinum.
Sin Idinam.
He
Uh,
ruled from 1850 to 1843, so 7 years.
he, like Senustret, actually went and kind of. It says he kind of dredged up the Tigris River. He basically made a whole new plot of area for a lot more growth, and so it allowed for a lot more wealth and trade to come into the region, more roads and stuff like that. Helped with some of the flooding and things that really just stabilized, maybe stabilized is the wrong word, but brought in new prosperity to the region. He also built a massive wall around the city. Again, when I looked into these, they keep saying they're building walls, but walls were there. So I think what they mean is they increase the wall size, its grandeur, and stuff like that.
Yeah, they're
Again, take these with a grain of salt. They're not just building these giant walls from scratch every single
they're just
generation.
like fortifying the wall. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, he again. This is the one who defeated the coalition. Um,
I have that he fought against Babylon in year four, Ibrat and Malgium in year five, and Eshnuna in year six.
well, you're
Is that
right. This isn't.
correct?
Yeah, that is my fault. This isn't the coalition from Isin, though. Yeah, he's fighting off Babylon. And again, Babylon's still more of a regional power at this point. I don't want to make Babylon sound too strong. It's obviously getting big in the future, but for now, it's just a regional power. But it's showing its power here that even Larsa, controlling most of Sumer and parts of Akkad, is able to be like threatened by Babylon.
I think that's what's kind of fun about this time period is these are the most powerful like areas in the world at this time, but they're still just basically a city or like maybe like a collection of cities that are connected and all this kind of stuff. But you can be on top, but it's so tentative. Whereas like nowadays, or even, a couple hundred years ago, it's like if you were the most powerful country in the world, it was pretty hard to just instantly like fall down a couple rungs. It's like you're more stable. So that's what's kind of fun is you could Larsa can be on top and then literally 2 years later they're just done. Like the city doesn't even
Yeah.
exist anymore. Like they abandoned the city.
And again, what's funny about these guys is I was trying to look it up and we just don't know why these next few had such short
Well,
reigns.
before we get there, I did have actually a couple of things about Synod Inidam more than
Yeah.
the others. Just that I don't know, this is kind of random, but it says he's known for a prayer to the god Utu, who he describes as father of the black-headed ones. So I feel like whatever is Larsa, I forget if they're Akkadian or Sumerian. I guess Akkadian, but I know it's a mixture of stuff. But there's something like black-headed ones must be like some
That's
group.
what Sumerian meant.
Okay, that's
When I looked up
Sumerians.
and talked about Sumerians, it meant like black-headed ones. I also don't think they called themselves that when I was looking into it. That's more of like what modern people call it. They think it was pronounced or said differently. Um, but
But
that's
that's what
where
it meant,
Sumer,
right? It's like that's the meaning of what they were saying.
yeah. He also this guy was had a lot of inscriptions about him in contrast to some of the Isin, which I guess shows they had more power, they had more time to do this kind of stuff. Um, but he also, funny enough, promoted the Sumerian culture a lot. It was kind of a
Hmm.
shift from being more Akkadian. I just think it's really funny that as these guys start to take over Sumer and Akkad, they're like, actually, we're Sumerian. And I get that it's more of a legitimacy thing, but it's just funny that that just keeps happening. They're like, "Oh, we're firmly Akkadian. No, we're very Amorite." And then as they get big, they're transitioned
They
into, "Oh
become
no,
more
we're Sumerian.
Sumerian.
Yeah, Sumerian. That's how I do all
You
my
met
stuff."
me at a very Sumerian time in my life.
Yeah.
And then I thought this was interesting. It says plague strikes Larsa in 1843, and that's how Sin Idunum dies.
Oh,
And
then that explains it because I did not. I
yeah,
was trying to find out his death, and I did not.
but it doesn't say like I wonder what I don't think it's the Black Plague. I don't think
Oh
exists
no,
yet.
nothing like
So I
that. I think
wonder
plagues were just
when it says plague, just
common back
general
then in
bad
general.
sickness. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then after him in Larsa, we've got Sin Irabam, who's only there for 2 years from 1843 to 1841. I feel like we can just kind of skip him. I don't know.
Shortest monarch. Well, I have a couple of things,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
because yeah, there's a lot of internal politics given the short reign. Um, but he did continue his aggressive stance against Isin. I believe this is the one
Shocker.
that took Nippur for good
Okay. For
and
good this
held it.
time.
Yeah. Um, and so yeah, I didn't have a lot about him. Yeah,
Yeah.
he conquered some cities, some small regional powers.
All right.
But he really was he saw that Babylon was becoming an issue and was really trying to push back against them, but didn't really live long enough to do much
Do
about
anything about it.
it.
Because then we have Sin Ikisham, who I do have a couple things about.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know. Just assume maybe some of these people are the other one's son, or somehow they're taking over the city. And Sin Ikisham, it says that he seized, man, some of these names. He seized Pinaratim and Nazarim in his second year, and then he defeated Kazulu, Elam, and Zimbaya, king of Isin, in
Yep.
Babylon
This
in his
was the
first
guy.
year.
That's where I got mixed up before. He's the one who shut down Zimbaya and essentially it's kind of putting the final nail in the coffin of Isin.
Isin.
Um, again, now that they control Nipper, um, I am surprised that I couldn't find that even though they controlled Nipper, they started to fashion themselves as kings of Sumer and Akkad. Because remember, we talked about few episodes ago that was kind of the significance of having Nipper. You could claim that title for yourself. But I
Yeah.
didn't find anything of him doing that, so I don't know if that was just implied at this point because he had so much power. Um, but yeah, it's interesting. He did
Yeah,
build,
maybe I think if you have like mostly every other city besides Nipper, you can still maybe he didn't say the actual term, but he just was like, well, I have enough power, it's fine. I don't need to call myself that.
yeah. So he had, even though he reigned for a short time, a lot of good military victories that helped solidify Larsa's power and Isin's decline. He built a big canal that allowed even more productivity and wealth. And given the large number of I keep wanting to call them documents, but tablets and cones that they have about him shows that there was a lot of administrative bureaucracy going on at this time, which I guess is implied for any large ruler, but it just shows a consolidation and stabilization that they're trying
Yeah.
to get off.
You got to remember that the concept of a city or an empire or a kingdom or anything I mean, it's like a couple thousand years old technically, but like that's there weren't that many places that were like actually a city or a city state. So you're just having to make up every concept. They literally invented the wheel and the concept of laws and writing down laws and
And again, they take these from the predecessors, which is interesting. You know, a lot of this bureaucracy and stuff they got from the Earth Re dynasty that sort of put that in place. And
Mhm.
hey, bureaucracy is better than just constantly fighting all the time. Granted, these guys were doing that too, but
Yeah, but you can have both.
you're
They're both pretty
like,
fun.
"It's a little column A, a little column B, we got this."
A little war, a little bureaucracy. Just have a great time. So then I like the next guy because the next
You like
ruler
this
of
next guy?
Larsa is Sili-Adad. Sili-Adad.
I did like his name, but he is the
His reign is
unfortunate.
less than a year.
He's unfortunate. They said 6 to 9 months.
That's rough. It just says
Yeah.
he was quote unquote removed from kingship and he was quote unquote was no longer king.
Wow.
It literally sounds like I don't know, like Trump or something, like one of Trump's cabinet of just like he's just in that position for like 3 months, then it's just like, yeah, I just fired him. Like
Yeah,
instantly.
he was just let go. People didn't think he was doing a good job. This other guy was just like, I think I could do a good job, and he just people were down for it.
I
Yeah.
guess Wared Sin was the next one.
Well,
Um, right?
yes and no, because I wrote for because I'm sure you saw it too. The Kuder Maba,
Right. So that's what's
the
weird
father.
is so like the next
Yeah,
ruler is technically Wared Sin, but Wared Sin's father was very powerful, Kudur Mubuk, but
he
he
was
was
the one who
not a
actually
king.
conquered the city and put his son in power. They said one of the reasons they know he had so much power is when the kings were again these new kings from this new dynasty, Water Sin, would put their names on things and their king names. They always mentioned their father, Kudur Mabuk. So it clearly he had
He
influence.
was
A lot of
a
people think
big
he was
deal.
more or less just ruling from the shadows.
I wonder
Um,
why he wouldn't just be like, I'm the king though. Was he like old or
That
something?
I couldn't find anything, and a lot of people don't know other than it seemed like maybe he just wanted to focus on military conquest and he'd rather his sons do the bureaucratic stuff and just kind of stay in the city and handle that. Um, because he wanted to remain the military and tribal leader because he was the leader of a huge confederation of Amorites, which ironically enough, I didn't realize this, but they mentioned this. His name is very Elamite in fashion culture. So they said he must have some ties to Elam, but they don't really know much because he was clearly an Amorite leader of an Amorite tribe, several Amorite tribes.
Weird. And
Yeah,
those are on like opposite sides of Mesopotamia.
but remember they were running rampant
True,
through.
Amorites and Elamites are running all over the place. That's the thing
Yeah,
is yeah, it's almost like being like how Napoleon was technically not French. What was it? He was from like some region that was not technically French. I can't remember.
yeah. I
But
don't remember. I'll be
it's
honest,
just
but
yeah, there's different like details with that
his
stuff.
children were kind of puppets. But yeah, this was their dynastic takeover that leads to essentially Larsa's peak. And he pretty much more or less unified the South. Obviously, doesn't have Isin, but as you can tell on the map, Isin's a little bit further up. So he controls most of southern Sumer. Right, that might be all. I will be honest. I've looked at it a lot, but it's hard for me to tell the borderline between Sumer and Akkad. I think that's why they
Yeah,
call them both the
it's
same.
big. Yeah. So
um,
wait, so Cooter Mubuk conquered Larsa, but then gave
Yes.
it to his son.
And the thing is, he did conquer it. I just don't know if that phrasing's poor because it wasn't like it was a new dynasty and stuff, but they didn't come in and just conquer the whole region. It seemed like they sort of got rid of the king, pushed themselves into kingship, and just said, "We're in charge now," which I know sounds the same as
Yeah, I
conquering,
think he
but
was
it's
like a
not like they.
military commander because I think he was art. It says he also led a number of military campaigns for Larsa, especially during the reign of Rimsin. He restored whatever. Maybe he was like a really powerful military commander that like put his son on the throne or something.
And then his daughter ended up being the priestess at which was obviously like another way of consolidating power over that time. I mean, the stuff I found called Waddenson the Boy King. So he clearly was young-ish, at least for the time. Again, I know people didn't live that long back then. I mean, well, there's some exceptions. We had some long leaders, but um, yeah, he pretty much ruled from the shadows as his son, and then eventually his other son rule over Larsa. But that's why I wanted to put emphasis on not really conquered per se, because this wasn't a big shift other than the dynasty. It seemed like daily lives of people stayed the same. There wasn't some massive war. It's sort of like he just kind of came in and said, "I'm in charge now," and it just sort of happened.
Yeah.
But
Interesting
he
guy. I
helped.
would say he's the Gun Gunham of this episode. The main character.
Yeah.
Maybe we should have a main character of each episode, and I feel like the main character of this episode is Kudur Mabuk.
Yeah.
Kudur Mabuk.
And so he helped stabilize their borders. Obviously, Isin wasn't much of a threat anymore. They were still dealing with it, but their focus also was on Babylon. They could see
Well,
it rising.
I
Yeah.
was just gonna say Babylon. Yeah, we're going back. So what was going on in Babylon was we had Sumulael back in from all the way from 1880 to 1845. So we had mentioned him last time, but he's ruling all the way till 1845. Um,
He's the second king of the Babylonian dynasty, so that's how early we are in Babylon.
and then
uh,
after, is there anything you wanted to say? Because then after him is Sabium.
his main thing was I was just going to say how he helped finish consolidating Kish and conquering Kazalu. Um, and the big thing I thought was funny because I was like, Kazalu, I remember that before. And yeah, Larsa did capture it, but then Babylon ends up capturing it because they didn't want Larsa to use it as a launching point for further invasions into Babylon. So it shows that they were smart thinkers. They could see what was down the road. And he, again, Shamu La'el, also helped elevate Marduk as the chief deity of Babylon. Now, granted, his father did that too, but he helped really solidify it where people were seeing him as a powerful force, a powerful pantheon member.
All right.
So then, yeah, Sabium from 1845 to 1831.
He's an Amorite king. And from 1845 to 1831.
He took it from a minor city state to a regional power. That's what I wrote down in terms of its growth. Because again, Babylon, as much as we know about the future, is small at this point, but he at least got it to a point where Larsa and Isin are like, hey, we got to look out for
There's
this
something
guy.
going on over here.
These guys are really getting big. We're too busy fighting each other. A
Yeah.
third player has entered the game.
Yeah, that's what it is basically. It's an Amorite kingdom that's kind of in the area of Babylon, but it's not even that like Babylon is necessarily the capital. It's just like one of the cities within it.
Yeah, and he helped build a big temple complex to Marduk. Now, granted, there was a temple obviously already there, but he pushed it over the edge to make this big complex to show that, we are with Marduk, that he stands with us.
And I think we should start doing what the Mesopotamians did, and instead of being 2026, it should be like the year that Sora AI was shut down.
Yeah. Except for us, too much stuff is happening, right?
Yeah,
It
that
would
would be
be like the
impossible.
month where, or the day where this happens.
In the book Infinite Jest, they do this thing where every year is sponsored by a different company. So it's like the year of like Tide Pods.
That's really funny.
So yeah, Sabium. I know he had the year of the city wall of Kazulu was destroyed, and the year the army of Larsa was smitten by weapons.
Yep.
So those
Again,
are 4 years.
he pushed them back because Cthulhu was controlled by Larsa, which who had taken it from someone else. So, and again, the key thing too was Cthulhu was the place where Babylon, the original Babylon dynasty, came from. They left from there and established their own small little city. Granted, Babylon did exist, but they were the ones who turned it into um, a bigger, just major hub, which then eventually became its own kingdom.
Hmm. And then this is what I think you mentioned earlier, where Ashuna teamed up with Larsa and Uruk against Sabium of Babylon and his ally Nerebtum. Did you see
Mhm.
that anywhere? Or is that a
Yeah,
different?
I see the. Wait, let me go down. I split these up into things.
And there is a Neo-Babylon text which contains a literary chronicle of Sabium and Applesin, who was the grandfather of Hammurabi.
I do have that he built the Sabium Canal, which actually brought irrigation to Babylon's like heartland. Before
Oh,
they,
that's important.
yeah, they got a lot of their growth. Obviously, everywhere was farming. I mean, it's Mesopotamia; it's fertile land, but it allowed them to rapidly expand their production right in Babylon instead of having to rely on neighboring tribes or smaller cities or something like that. But yeah, I just put that he successfully defended Babylon territory against
All
Larsa.
right.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, we've got Applesin, who is the last one we'll talk about of Babylon, because he actually doesn't start till 1831. So I won't really say much
Oh
about
yeah,
him.
I didn't
But
have much about him because I figured we
just,
might be easier to cover him next
yeah,
time.
just know he's the grandfather of Hammurabi.
Yes.
And we don't know too much about him, because this is still, again, like, it's a small area. But I did want to touch on another city, what's going on in Uruk. But all I really have is there was a ruler, Sin Kassid, from 1865 to 1833, so pretty long. And he was Amorite, but they don't know too much about him.
He would have been the one that first broke off from Isin because I mentioned that earlier with the Isin lost control of Uruk.
Oh, okay, right. So that makes sense. That he was a pretty, I mean, powerful guy that he was able to pull out from Isin. But that's what I was gonna say was even though Larsa's on top, like they're more powerful than Isin, you can see with how many different kings there have been and just how there's not too much going on that it's all sort of slowly crumbling and you see how Babylon is able to eventually rise up.
I mean, you can tell too from just Larsa fighting against them and Babylon holding its own. Now, Babylon didn't like, take over or anything yet, but the fact that they were able to push them off is still impressive.
Um Apparently his letter to the god Meslamte became a uh, something that you would use to practice writing and used in scribal education.
Interesting.
And yeah, they were Sumerian names, which is different than the Akkadian monikers of his dynasty. Yeah, never mind. Anything you wanted to say about Uruk before? I just wanted to touch on Assyria.
No, yeah, go for it.
Just like Babylon, Assyria is also in kind of like a pre-kingdom period, and the ruler there is Naram-Sin. So a lot of sin. I feel like I keep hearing sin.
Yeah, from Larsa, from Isin, from Babylon.
Um, but there's a pretty cool drawing of them. I like the Babylonian art style.
Yeah, I love their sphinxes.
Here, I can show you right here. But this is him on the left. That's old Naram-Sin.
Man, where did that technology go? No one
I
draws like
know.
that
It went to second graders. What I
anymore.
like is look at his actual picture. It's literally just
Uh,
that zoomed in on his head. I think, I think that's a nice place to leave us.
yeah.
Leave Mesopotamia is on the head of Naram Sin. of Assyria.
And then
Um,
Mari, I don't have much about him because I'm going to talk about him next time, but Mari now is another powerhouse.
oh yeah, so right, they're gonna start growing next episode, you said.
I mean, the main key
Stay
takeaway from
tuned.
this is as Isin and Larsa, even though Larsa's taking over, as Isin and Larsa are constantly attacking each other, it allows all these smaller regional powers to start consolidating land, soldiers, and administrative, governance, and getting bigger, making their stake and claim on everything.
And it's kind of ironic, I guess, that it's like Egypt is in a pretty stable, like Middle Kingdom kind of peak, and then Mesopotamia is really in kind of a random period that people don't usually talk about. And right around when Egypt is gonna get more chaotic and divided, Mesopotamia is gonna get more united with Babylon and
Hmm.
everything. So interesting to note, but I don't know. Sometimes I like a nice episode like this one where we're sort of just we're just in it, We're fully
There were a lot of kings. I had to research a lot of kings.
a lot of names. We're getting better with our names, and I'm starting to kind of feel out like the different like you can kind of tell who's maybe Sumerian or Akkadian or like Elamite.
Hmm.
They kind of have different like patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think next week we will stick with the 30 years and do 1830 and just end with 1800, nice and clean. And then maybe after that, we'll kind of see. Maybe we'll slow down back to like 20 years. Well, follow us on Lost Decades Pod on Instagram and also on YouTube. We have our videos in case you're just listening. Make sure to like and subscribe like usual. All right. That's been another episode of Lost Decades. Get lost.